China
Public
and
statements, their
Uyghurs
protest
podcast.
actions, their media discussions, how all that offers these distinct lenses on this ongoing human rights crisis.
Yeah, we're drawing directly from, their speeches, social media, podcast articles, really trying to grasp how they frame the oppression itself.
What are their key arguments, their calls to action?
Exactly. What do they emphasize? What are they critical of? And looking at the nuances within their advocacy, too.
Okay, so let's start with Mohammed Hijab. He's a very prominent British Muslim scholar and activist, and his perspective, certainly in the sources we looked at, consistently frames the Uyghur situation as a direct attack on their Islamic faith. What's sort of central to his argument there?
Well, his core point, and it's strikingly clear, is that he states the Chinese government built these, quote, concrete prisons, these detention camps,
Right.
in Xinjiang precisely because the Uyghurs, in his words, refused to give up Islam.
Wow.
Yeah, he asserts quite bluntly, if the Uyghurs gave up their loyalty to Allah, there would be no need for these camps. It's a really powerful claim, focusing squarely on religious persecution.
That is a powerful statement. And he wasn't afraid to make pretty bold public displays either to underline this point. We saw that very clearly at a #StandForUyghurs protest.
Outside the Chinese embassy in London, right? Back in November 2021.
That's the one. He gave this really passionate speech, didn't he? Highlighting the contrast. China, 1.4 billion people, targeting this relatively small group, 12 to 15 million Uyghurs.
Solely for their faith, according to him.
Precisely. But what really got people talking at that protest was that symbolic action he took.
Oh, the shirt incident, yes.
Yeah, he took off his shirt, which had the Uyghur flag on it, and dramatically threw it towards the embassy.
Symbolically telling them to use this as their flag, I think was the quote.
That was it?
About his style of activism.
Definitely. And thinking bigger picture, he also drew some interesting lines between the Uyghur situation and other conflicts, like Israel-Palestine.
Yeah, he made a distinction there. He suggested that because Xinjiang is, on paper at least, recognized as an autonomous region in China's constitution.
Unlike Gaza, for example.
Exactly, unlike Gaza. So he implied that international pressure might actually have more leverage, suggesting China internally knows it's not their territory.
Interesting angle. Sort of a legal constitutional pressure point, maybe?
That seems to be the idea he was putting forward, yeah. Using China's own framework as potential leverage.
And he's used his platforms very effectively to get this message out.
Oh, consistently.
Yeah.
Platforms like Muslim Central, which is, huge online for Islamic content, and his own YouTube channel, he started posting there way back in 2015.
So a long-standing presence.
Definitely. Amplifying this narrative, religious persecution, cultural suppression. It's consistent.
Okay.
But it is worth noting, while his views certainly align with international reports about the camps and the cultural issues, our sources mainly show his statements from around 2021, and they don't explicitly mention China's potential, resource-driven motives in Xinjiang.
Like oil, gas, cotton, that kind of thing.
Right. His focus, based on what we reviewed, stays very much on the ideological and religious fight.
Okay, so that's hijab, focusing intensely on that religious defiance. How does Dili Hussein's perspective stack up? He's the deputy editor of Five Pillars, another key British Muslim news site. His advocacy shares some common ground, obviously, but also some distinct points of emphasis, right?
Absolutely. Hussein also frames it very strongly as a genocide. He uses terms like concentration camps, torture.
Explicitly linking it to faith.
Explicitly saying it's just for being Muslim. And what's interesting is how early he was voicing frustration. We found a post on X from September 2020.
Oh, yeah. What did it say?
He expressed this deep heartbreak, this frustration that, quote, no one seems to be talking about it or care because it's not a trend.
Ah, that feeling of the world moving on or not paying enough attention.
Exactly. It speaks to that challenge of keeping a spotlight on these long-term crises.
And a really critical part of Hussein's message, something that comes through strongly, is his critique of Muslim-majority governments. He doesn't mince words there.
Not at all. There's a February 2021 X post where he stated, very directly, Muslim governments have not just abandoned the Uyghurs, but they've been complicit in siding with the Chinese regime in their genocide.
Wow. Complicit. That's strong.
Very strong. He points to what he sees as a failure to uphold the concept of the Ummah, the global Muslim community. That's a recurring theme for him, this idea of internal responsibility within the Muslim world.
But his critique isn't only aimed there, is it? He's also pretty skeptical about Western motives, especially when it comes to potential U.S. help.
That's right. We looked at a June 2020 discussion on the Blood Brothers podcast. In it, Hussein actually debated whether Uyghurs should even seek U.S. assistance.
Really? Why the hesitation?
He voiced significant distrust. He worried that U.S. support might just be part of what he termed a neocon agenda against China.
Meaning not genuine humanitarian concern, but more geopolitical maneuvering.
That seems to be his concern, yeah. He consistently pushed for Muslim unity, for grassroots advocacy, rather than relying on Western powers, whose motives he clearly questions.
He even criticized other advocacy efforts from that same angle, didn't he?
He did. Our sources point to a 2020 article he wrote for $5. In it, he critiqued Majid Nawaz's hunger strike for the Uyghurs,
On what grounds?
questioning the motives, the timing, again suggesting it conveniently aligned with a Western neocon agenda.
So seeing potential manipulation even in solidarity efforts.
And he went further, drawing parallels between China's policies in Xinjiang and some Western counter-extremism strategies. He implied both end up demonizing what he called normative Islam.
That's a provocative comparison.
It is. It really shows his broad skepticism towards state power, East or West, and its impact on Muslim communities.
So he's really looking at those geopolitical layers, the power dynamics.
Very much so. And he's kept up this advocacy, using the Five Pillars platform, delivering another reportedly fiery speech at a Uyghur solidarity protest in London in July 2022.
Okay.
But similar to hijab, it's interesting that our sources for Hussein also don't show him explicitly linking the oppression to, say, resource exploitation in Xinjiang.
Still focused primarily on the religious persecution and these geopolitical critiques.
Exactly. And his most recent specific statement on the Uyghurs that we found in our source set was from that 2022 protest.
Okay, so we've looked at Muhammad Hijab, Dili Hussein. Two distinct, passionate voices. What connects them? Where do their approaches really differ? What does this tell us?
Well, the common ground is really strong and fundamental. Both of them, absolutely unequivocally, frame the Uyghur oppression as religious persecution.
Right, that's central for both.
Central. Muslims targeted for their faith, and both have been very skilled at using public platforms, protests, online media, you name it, to raise awareness and reach huge audiences. That shared commitment is clear.
But the how, the strategy, that's where we see the divergence. Hijab's approach, like we discussed with the 2021 protest, that shirt incident, it feels more emotive, more direct.
Yeah, focused on the religious defiance of the Uyghurs.
Exactly. It seems aimed at rallying a very specific, deeply felt religious solidarity, maybe inspiring action through those passionate appeals to faith itself.
Right, whereas Hussein, if we connect this to the bigger picture, his approach often weaves in that much broader geopolitical critique we talked about.
His criticism of Muslim governments.
For their complicity, yes, and that deep skepticism about Western motives, that really sets his perspective apart.
It highlights more of a focus on what inter-Muslim solidarity, perhaps, and a real caution about outside interventions.
Precisely. It's less about maybe the immediate symbolic defiance and more about critiquing the systems at play, advocating for strategic unity within the global Muslim community, kind of aiming for long-term self-reliance, maybe.
So looking at these two, Hijab and Hussein, both clearly committed, but with such different emphases, what does that teach us about advocacy itself? Especially for these incredibly complex international human rights issues.
Well, it shows there isn't just one way, right?
Yeah. This deep dive has really highlighted how Muhammad Hijab and Dili Hussein, even with their different styles, both shine a crucial light on the severe persecution of Uyghur Muslims. And for both, that primary lens is religious identity and faith.
And that's where this knowledge becomes really useful, I think. Understanding not just the stark facts of the oppression itself, but also seeing the different ways activists try to mobilize support.
The different lenses they use.
Exactly. From hijab's focus on direct religious solidarity, that very visceral connection, to Hussein's more complex geopolitical critique, they represent different pathways for people to engage with the issue, each with its own appeal, its own strengths.
So as you, our listener, reflect on this, here's maybe a final thought to chew on. Given these diverse approaches to advocacy that we've just discussed, what responsibility do different actors really have?
Thinking about global communities, governments, even individual citizens like us.
Right. How do we respond to human rights crises that are framed simultaneously through intense religious persecution and these really complex, sometimes cynical geopolitical agendas? How do you balance that necessary skepticism of motives with the undeniable urgent need for humanitarian intervention?